Just days before the middle of February, a busy street in Peckham became the scene of another fatal act of knife violence, adding to growing concerns about youth safety in London. A 19-year-old man, whose name has not been released, was stabbed during the evening hours, collapsing in a public area surrounded by shops, traffic, and witnesses. Emergency services rushed to the scene, but despite their efforts, the teenager was pronounced dead shortly after. Police confirmed that the suspects responsible fled the area, leaving behind unanswered questions and a community shaken by yet another life lost to street violence. Officers from the Metropolitan Police Service launched a murder investigation, appealing urgently for witnesses, doorbell footage, and CCTV recordings that could help trace the attacker's movements. As of 19 February 2026, no arrests have been made, and detectives say the investigation remains active. For residents of Peckham, the killing has reignited fears about knife crime and the fragile line between everyday life and sudden tragedy in London's streets. As night fell over Peckham, the area where the stabbing occurred slowly returned to movement, but not to normality. Blue police tape cut across pavements that, hours earlier, had been filled with commuters, shoppers, and young people heading home. The sharp contrast between the everyday rhythm of the street and the violence that had just unfolded left residents visibly shaken. For many, the realization came later. This was not something that happened somewhere else. It happened here. Emergency crews had arrived quickly after reports of a stabbing involving a teenage male. Paramedics worked urgently at the scene, attempting to save the 19-year-old who had suffered fatal injuries. Despite their efforts, he was pronounced dead shortly afterward. Police confirmed that his family had been informed and that formal identification procedures were underway. Out of respect and in line with standard practice, the victim's name was not immediately released. Detectives from the Metropolitan Police Service moved swiftly to establish a cordon and preserve evidence. Forensic officers could be seen combing the area, marking points of interest and collecting items from the ground. CCTV cameras mounted on nearby shops, buses, and residential buildings became an immediate focus. In a city as densely monitored as London, investigators know that even a single camera angle can prove decisive. What remains unclear is how the confrontation began. Police have not confirmed whether the stabbing followed an argument, whether the victim was targeted, or whether the violence was opportunistic. That uncertainty has fueled anxiety among local residents, many of whom rely on the same streets daily. Authorities have been careful not to speculate, stressing that premature conclusions can jeopardize an investigation. Witnesses reported seeing groups of people running shortly after the incident, though police have not verified how many suspects may be involved. Officers have appealed for anyone who was in the area at the time, whether they witnessed the attack directly or noticed suspicious behavior before or after, to come forward. Even seemingly minor details, investigators say, could help piece together a critical timeline. As news of the stabbing spread, it joined a growing list of knife-related incidents that continue to dominate London's crime reporting. While overall trends fluctuate, the emotional impact of each case remains the same. A young life lost, a family grieving, a community left asking why. Local leaders describe the killing as devastating, but not isolated. Knife crime, particularly involving young people, has become one of the most complex challenges facing urban policing. Officials emphasize that enforcement alone cannot solve the problem, pointing instead to the need for early intervention, community support, and youth engagement. Still, for families living in affected neighborhoods, such discussions can feel painfully abstract in the immediate aftermath of loss. In Peckham, floral tributes began to appear near the cordon. Notes left by strangers spoke of sorrow, anger, and exhaustion, messages that have become heartbreakingly familiar across London. Many expressed frustration that, despite years of awareness campaigns and policing efforts, teenagers continue to die in public spaces. Police patrols in the area were increased following the stabbing, both to reassure residents and to gather further information. Officers spoke with shopkeepers, bus drivers, and residents whose doorbell cameras might have captured movement around the time of the attack. These quiet conversations, conducted away from headlines, often form the backbone of successful investigations. Behind the scenes, detectives work to reconstruct the victim's final hours. This process involves tracing phone records, reviewing social media activity, and speaking with friends and acquaintances to understand where he had been and who he had interacted with. Police stress that this work is standard procedure and does not imply wrongdoing on the part of the victim. The decision not to release the teenager's name reflects the sensitivity of the case. Families are often given time to grieve privately before a loved one's identity becomes public. In many knife crime cases, names are released only once relatives feel ready or when it becomes necessary to advance the investigation. Community advocates warned against online speculation, which often intensifies after such incidents. Rumors shared on social media can spread quickly, sometimes accusing individuals without evidence or misrepresenting events. Police urge the public to rely on verified information and to submit tips directly through official channels rather than online commentary. For young people in the area, the stabbing has reinforced a sense of vulnerability that many already feel. Youth workers reported an uptick in anxiety among teenagers, some of whom now avoid certain routes or gatherings. Schools and community centers were advised to remain alert and offer support where needed. The investigation remains active, and police have not ruled out any lines of inquiry. They confirmed that specialist units are involved and that all available resources are being used to identify those responsible. While no arrests have been announced, officers remain confident that public cooperation will play a crucial role. Knife crime investigations often hinge on a combination of forensic evidence and witness testimony. Unlike firearms, knives are easier to discard and harder to trace, placing greater importance on human observation, who saw what, and when. This is why appeals for information continue days after the incident, long after the initial shock fades. As London absorbs another violent death, the broader conversation inevitably resurfaces. How does a city protect its young people? How does it interrupt cycles of violence before they escalate? These questions have no simple answers, but each case adds urgency to the search for solutions. For now, the focus remains on justice. Somewhere, police believe, there are individuals who know exactly what happened that night in Peckham. Whether out of fear, loyalty, or uncertainty, they may be hesitant to speak. Investigators hope that conscience and the weight of a life lost will eventually bring answers. Until then, a family mourns a son whose future ended abruptly, and a community lives with the echo of sirens and the knowledge that ordinary evenings can turn tragic without warning. The investigation continues, and with it, the quiet determination to ensure that this killing does not fade into anonymity. As the investigation moved into its second week, detectives acknowledged the most difficult phase of any homicide inquiry: waiting. Waiting for someone to come forward. Waiting for a fragment of information that turns suspicion into certainty. Waiting for a breakthrough that often arrives quietly, not through dramatic revelations, but through persistence. Officers from the Metropolitan Police Service continued door-to-door inquiries across the surrounding streets. In neighborhoods like Peckham, where streets are dense and movement constant, even a few minutes of activity can produce dozens of potential witnesses. A person stepping out of a shop, a car slowing unexpectedly, a group moving quickly in the opposite direction. These moments matter, even when they seem insignificant at first. Detectives paid particular attention to CCTV coverage. London's extensive camera network is one of the most powerful tools available in modern policing, but it is not automatic. Each camera must be identified, requested, reviewed, and synchronized with others to build a reliable timeline. Investigators carefully mapped the area, tracing likely routes taken before and after the stabbing. This process can take days, sometimes weeks, but it is often where cases turn. Police reiterated their appeal for private footage as well. Doorbell cameras, dash cams, and mobile phone recordings frequently capture angles that public cameras miss. Officers stressed that even footage showing nothing unusual can help eliminate possibilities and narrow the search area. Silence, in an investigation, can be as informative as noise. For residents of Peckham, the presence of uniformed officers became part of daily life. Some found reassurance in the increased patrols. Others felt the familiar tension that follows serious violence, an unease that lingers even when danger is no longer immediate. Conversations in shops and on buses often return to the same question: who was responsible and why? Community leaders urged calm and cooperation. They reminded residents that speculation can harm investigations, particularly in knife crime cases, where rumors spread quickly online. False narratives can place innocent people at risk and divert attention from those truly responsible. Police echoed this message, emphasizing that justice depends on evidence, not assumptions. Behind the scenes, specialist officers work to understand the victim's movements in the hours leading up to the attack. This is standard procedure in homicide cases and is handled with care. Friends, acquaintances, and family members are contacted not as suspects, but as sources of context. Investigators aim to understand routine, where the victim usually went, who they spent time with, and whether anything out of the ordinary occurred that day. Authorities confirmed there was no immediate indication that the victim was involved in criminal activity at the time of the stabbing. They cautioned against narratives that attempt to justify violence by implying blame. Regardless of circumstances, police stated, The use of a knife resulting in death is a criminal act, and responsibility lies solely with those who carried it out. As days passed without arrests, pressure grew, not just on police but on the wider system. Knife crime remains one of London's most persistent challenges, particularly among young people. Each incident revives debates about policing tactics, youth services, education, and social inequality. Yet for families affected directly, these discussions feel distant compared to the immediacy of loss. Vigils continued quietly. Candles burned low at makeshift memorials, replaced as they melted or blew out. Messages left behind spoke less of anger and more of sadness, expressions of grief from people who never knew the victim personally, but recognized the shared vulnerability of youth. "This could have been anyone," one note read. Police confirmed that the investigation remained open and active. They did not rule out multiple suspects, nor did they confirm whether the stabbing was targeted or spontaneous. Such determinations, officers explained, require a complete evidentiary picture. Premature conclusions risk missing critical links. Knife crime investigations are often complex because the weapons involved are easy to conceal and dispose of. Unlike firearms, which leave distinctive forensic trails, knives can disappear quickly. This reality places enormous importance on witness testimony and visual evidence. It is why appeals to the public remain central long after headlines fade. Youth workers in the area reported heightened anxiety among teenagers. Some avoided certain streets, others altered routines, traveling in groups or staying home after dark. Schools and community organizations responded by increasing outreach, offering spaces for young people to talk openly about fear and loss. While these efforts cannot undo what happened, they aim to prevent further harm. The Metropolitan Police reiterated their commitment to treating the case with urgency and sensitivity. Senior officers acknowledged public frustration, but emphasized that thorough investigations take time. Solving a murder is not just about speed, it is about certainty. An arrest made without sufficient evidence risks collapse in court, leaving families without justice. As the investigation continued, one message remained consistent: someone knows something. Whether it is a direct witness, a person who heard a conversation afterward, or someone who saw suspicious behavior that seemed unimportant at the time, information exists beyond police files. Investigators urge those holding it to come forward, anonymously if necessary. For now, the name of the 19-year-old victim remains withheld, a reminder that behind police statements and news reports is a grieving family navigating the earliest days of loss. Their private pain unfolds away from cameras, even as the public searches for answers. The stabbing in Peckham is not yet a closed story. It is an unfolding investigation, shaped by patience, evidence, and the willingness of a community to speak. Justice, if it comes, will do so quietly, through careful work rather than dramatic gestures. Until that moment, the street where the attack occurred carries a weight that only time can lighten. Life continues around it, as it always does, but altered by the knowledge that violence can intrude without warning. The hope now rests on accountability, that those responsible will be identified, and that one more young life lost will not be dismissed as inevitable. If you want continued updates on this case and other carefully researched crime stories, please like the video, share it so accurate information reaches further, and subscribe to the channel for responsible, fact-based reporting.